a while since we've been behind the mics here, Marissa.
It has.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to One-on-One Live with Coach Blue and Athletic Director Marissa.
Hello.
Hope everyone's doing well. And I hope you guys haven't missed us too much. Last week, we were in the nation's capital, hanging out, seeing some sights, navigating the mean streets of D.C.
That was awesome.
Mean streets. No, it was a really fun trip, but that made it impossible for us to do the live. So thanks for being so patient. But hey, we're back in the full swing of things and looking forward to a lot of what's to come. We got so much on the horizon. You got to keep your eyes on the website addicttoathlete.org. You're going to find all of our races that are upcoming, content, backlog podcasts, information about the team, certified coaching, everything you need in the Addict to Athletes world. addicttoathlete.org. And speaking of those two races, Marissa, they're rapidly approaching. We've got our first one coming up in June, the No One Left Behind team half marathon. Yeah. This is where you get to maybe bring someone new on board who's never ran one before, a little bit nervous about doing maybe the mileage of 13, and you get to finish with them. The concept is everyone finishes together. You start together, you finish together. It's kind of the principle of life, kind of the principle of recovery.
Yeah, I can't do it alone.
Stronger in numbers, absolutely. And so jump on addicttoathlete.org. The race is open. We got awesome medals and shirts, and hopefully the waters will recede a bit because we're running next to a beautiful river there, the Spanish Fork River.
It's a beautiful course on a trail that follows the river. So right now there's a few spots that are covered, but I think it will have receded by then. If not, we have some alternate routes
if not, we'll
planned.
have some different routes and stuff still happening.
Yeah, it's going to be great. And I've heard, I've really only done one half marathon, but I've heard that it's the perfect distance.
It is.
Because it's a little bit of a challenge, but not too much that it's going to
you can still walk after it. Like you can walk upstairs and not be too in pain.
And it's also doesn't require so much commitment for training.
Right.
So it's really a good one for beginners who want to get into running. So maybe you're pushing yourself a little bit further than a 5K. This is a great race. It's only $40. It's probably the cheapest half marathon around.
I get great running shirt, great medal.
Yeah, and great purpose, fun. People around. It's a beautiful morning. Yeah, it's wonderful.
Well, and again, think about it. You're running with people that you could, you rely on. So if one person's kind of struggling and hurting, those other two will give them the motivation.
Yeah.
Sometimes, you can't run the whole thing. So it's nice to have a power walking buddy.
Yep.
There are no time limits to this. So there's no reason why you can't come out and even speed walk the thing if you'd like to. But yeah, coming up in June, we'd love to have you grab your family, use it as a proxy run series. If you want to, grab one of our bibs that you want to put a loved one's name on there, you could also do that as well. So again, coming up in June, June 16th or 17th?
17th.
June 17th.
I will post a link in the description here.
Absolutely. And come meet the team, come celebrate friendship and unity and get this goal accomplished.
And it's also one of the reasons I chose the end of June is it's the longest day of the year, getting close to that. It's the least chance of rain. It's the perfect time to run.
And I do believe right after the No One Left Behind that the Addicts Fighting Back are having a softball tournament. Is that the same day?
I think so. And we are talking about our next 5K in September, possibly doing another softball tournament too. So
there's a lot of recovery resources here in Utah. Addict Athlete gets to be one of many. And I think the cool thing about it is there's no longer a reason not to dive into your recovery. Yeah, there are so many outlets.
So much support and different things to do and utilize. In fact, as we talk about that, one of the other exciting events that we are just talking about doing and getting started right now is doing an Addict to Artist meeting coming up on May 15th.
Yep.
We have the infamous or famous, or what he's calling himself, the weirdo of recovery. Ryan Hymas is going to teach us some abstract art. And so when I was messaging him about, okay, what do I need? What supplies do we need? He's like, well, I have a blowtorch. I'm not sure what's going to happen at this meeting, but it's maybe something you don't want to miss.
Yeah.
If you want to come, we're doing that on Monday the 15th at 7 p.m. at our Homebase
Absolutely.
facility.
And this could serve as our relaunch of Addict to Artist. We've had it multiple times, but now with this new location, now that we've got our roots planted, it's time to open up that chapter of Addict to Athlete's sister program, Addict to Artist. So
absolutely.
Stay tuned. Thank you, Ryan, for being part of that. He's an amazing artist. You've showed me a lot of his stuff. And, It's cool though, because I've always thought that addict to artist would be bigger than addict to athlete. We just need some momentum to get it going.
Yeah.
And I think
so people that want to help get involved and do this, and Ryan is so excited. So I'm thrilled to have him come.
Yeah, absolutely. And while we're on the topic too, of just community and stuff out there, I want to thank all the athletes that participated and served with the run this last week in the 5K that Fit to Recover put on. They did a great job of putting on their very first 5K. We had some athletes run it, some athletes served there, and yeah, we like to formally invite the program to come hang out with us in September when we do our proxy run. We'd love to show them kind of how we do ours and kind of keep that community of recovery alive through Fit to Recover. So thank you everybody who supported that. It was a great experience when I heard. So
yeah, it was awesome.
And they had a great day to run. It was like 1,000,000 degrees. It was perfect.
Yeah, perfect weather. We also have our anniversary coming up, Addict Athlete, celebrating.
You know what? As of today, as a recording of this podcast, this right here is officially Addict to Athlete's 12th birthday, our anniversary.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Addict to Athlete. Yeah, it's crazy, Marissa. 12 years ago, we lined up for that race. And don't get me wrong, Addict to Athlete started a few months before that as we were training, but this was the date of the run that we did the Chase the Mayor 5K with the original 5 athletes that lined up there and took on recovery, opened up a new chapter and a new kind of, I guess, path to recovery.
Yeah.
11, 12 years later now, here we are. So
yeah, we're excited. We're going to have a big barbecue and a party. I think maybe even a volleyball tournament, May 13th at Carterville Park. All the information for that. And our art thing is on our website. We have a calendar up there now and events calendar, all of our support group meetings where we have support groups all throughout Utah. If you're around there, jump on.
And again, I don't want this to be a huge PA program here, but I just got a message from Coach Judy down in St. George. The week after our proxy run in September is going to be their recovery run. And so she's invited us to come down there and set up and do some stuff that we did last year. So keep eye on that too for all you Southern Utah, Northern Arizona folk.
Yeah.
Right? Northern Arizona, Northern Nevada.
Yeah. Our Vernal, you went to
Central Nevada.
County chapter is doing their 5K run, the Run to Remember, on Memorial Day next month in Vernal. If you're interested in that, I will be getting that information up on our website soon.
And if that weren't enough, this Saturday, they're also throwing themselves out of airplanes.
Yeah, that's right.
This is Coach Johnson's annual skydiving event extraordinaire. This is quite the to-do. So yeah, there's a lot going on with Team Addict to Athlete. We'd like to invite you to any and all of these endeavors. Get a hold of us. Again, your lifeline, addicttoathlete.org. Okay, Marissa, we do have a very special thing we want to talk about, and that is our Patreon. I mean, we really can't start this without sharing some love for our Patreon subscribers. If you want to join Patreon to help us push this podcast out further, to help kind of strengthen that reach that we have, you can do so by jumping on patreon.com/addicttoathlete. That'll take you to a place where you can sign up for whatever tier works best for you. Some goes from as little as $2 a month to get all of our bonus content, all the way up to becoming a champion level subscriber with all kinds of perks, benefits, and features. So, Marissa, who are they that we got to share some love with?
So we want to thank all of our super fans. We'll start with our super fans, and those guys donate $10 a month. We want to thank them: Karen Hardy, Steve Riggs, Tracy Whitby, Jerem Thurston, Tara Butson, Holly Davies, Scott Foster, Brett Frew, Chris Williams, Sensei KP Brown, Patrick Forsyth, Brock Ellerman, and Christy Case. Thank you.
Love you all. Fans. Thank you, super fans.
Yeah, our rookies, they donate $25 a month. We're so grateful for them. Sherry Polson, Earl Dyer, Wendell Wood, Brad Waldron, and Gary Thurston.
Woo! Thank you guys.
And our pro level is Justin Robbins from St. George, Utah. Thank you. And our champion level is Shad and Freya Robinson, Ron and Deloche, and Andrew Baird.
Thank you all so very much.
So much. We couldn't do it without you.
Andrew, what a guy. I love him.
Yeah.
He's always the guy that kicks off our county to county / break the cycle runs.
He does that every year.
Yeah.
Starts our Friday afternoon and gets everyone running.
And he's usually out there for more than one leg too. So thank you, Andrew. Appreciate you, brother. Marissa, interesting topic today. I've got a question from one of our listeners that I didn't realize the depth by which this question would take us as we were talking about it yesterday, he and I. But he talks about how there's so much spiritual connection in substance abuse treatment, in meetings, in redemption. And he asked me the question truly, like, how can spiritual connection help overcome addiction?
Oh.
And he was being very serious about it. And we're not talking about religion, right? Because religion's the organization, spirituality is that feeling, that deeper sense that you have within yourself.
Connection to something bigger than yourself. Yeah.
And I thought the question was profound because, like, it's what you make it, right? It's not as if, and I think sometimes in recovery, we get some of these taglines and we forget that there should be meaning and principle behind them.
Yeah.
And again, all kind of dinging things aside, things like, just for today, what does that even mean? Mm-hmm. Like, you say it so frequently that we forget that there's supposed to be substance behind it.
Yeah.
Right. And so when we talk about spirituality, you got to understand that the addiction is a very difficult and complex condition, right? Yeah. And it affects an individual and those around them in a lot of different areas, right? I mean, you're talking emotional, social, psychological, physical, and it can impact every aspect of your life.
Yeah.
So when I was talking to him yesterday, we're talking about, there's a lot of methods to treat addiction. We've seen a few, we've been a part of a few, we created one here.
Absolutely.
And, I think the interesting thing about it is, the concept of understanding your connection with a higher power or having spirituality as an accomplice, the companion, so to speak, through your recovery is kind of interesting. Because the first thing you need to understand is that addiction is very isolating. It's an isolating condition, right?
Absolutely.
And so anyone who suffers from any kind of addiction, they're going to feel cut off from others. Mm-hmm. I mean, correct?
Yeah. I mean, they withdraw. They usually start breaking and hurting relationships. They're lying. Addiction can't usually happen out in the open with lots of people. So there's a lot of secretiveness to it, which ends up cutting relationships. Yeah.
And so, I'm going to pause for a second and you just remind me of something. But on that part of being secretive, there's an interesting thing that happens with every person you come in contact with. There are actually 3 different kind of personalities we each possess every day. There's the public personality. This is the one you're seeing right now with us, right? Mm-hmm. And that public personality is, I've never seen Coach Blue without a hat. Have you seen me without a hat?
Yeah.
Okay. And those kind of things, right? The way that we produce ourselves and show ourselves publicly, the way we dress, the way we talk, the way we interact with public, the way we flow within public scene, right? We want to show ourselves to be, a part of the society.
Yeah. And depending on your job, sometimes there's different attire you have to wear, different ways that you need to present yourself for the situation.
So there's the public self, then there's the private self. This is the private self that Coach Blue is like, there's times I don't wear a hat, right? There's times when it's like, Coach Blue's feet stink. These kind of things. And the public wouldn't know that, but you might.
Yeah.
I think you would, right?
I do.
Like, man, go take a shower after mowing the lawn. And so that private self, you'll kind of share a little bit more of who you are with the people that are close to you, maybe relatives, close family members, very close friendships, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's different than the public face because in private, you're this person. Now, the goal is to try and get those two to kind of connect a little bit closer so that there's not so much of a deviation between the public and the private.
Yeah.
But there will be private things that you're not going to want to share with the public.
Yeah.
But then there's one more personality part to us that we all carry, and that's the secret one, the secret personality. And these are the concepts when we talk about what kind of person are you when no one's watching. Mm. And these are the things that we get really stuck with where we're like, I don't want my spouse to know. I don't want my friends to know. If they knew I felt this way or if I thought this way, they might think less of me. Mm-hmm. And when we get stuck there in public or in private, guess what happens?
Yeah, things start falling apart.
It just kills you. Yeah, it kills your soul. And so this is where spirituality comes in. Okay? Mm-hmm. The first things first. That connection with a higher power gives the individual a sense of belongingness and purpose that can kind of help them regain control of their lives. It's kind of like when everything else is stripped away.
Yeah.
There's one thing. Right. This is why I think it's interesting when people, and I've heard people say, oh, you can't, you shouldn't be able to find God in prison. That is the most perfect place to find God,
Absolutely.
To find spirituality. Why?
Cut from all distraction.
Absolutely.
All distraction, a lot of times the extra and abundance that we have by living outside of a place like that keeps us distracted from maybe more of the important things that we need to be in connection with. And oftentimes that is spirituality and a higher power, something greater than ourselves.
Absolutely. So if you feel cut off from all the others in your life, like super crazy and unmanageable there, that spirituality, that connection with the higher power is going to give you a sense of belongingness and purpose. And when you start to be able to do that, either through meditation, through just, being sober, there's some interesting things that happen. It's that sense of spirituality can lead to a healthy connection with yourself, with your creator, with the universe.
Yeah.
And it kind of shows you.
And that sense of belonging, whether it is with yourself, with maybe even if it is a religion, a connection with that congregation or group of people, a belonging with people who have like-minded thinking is going to create a feeling of understanding. And, it just helps people by feeling connected.
I think this is why, people often say that they're mad or frustrated with their higher power. And I've always been of the premise that they're good people. It's a good entity to be upset with, because you can be as mad, as egregious, as just rotten and quest for redemption as you want to be, because that spirituality, that universe, that power greater than you still cares about you, which is interesting.
Yeah.
It's a safe thing to be mad at. And so when you strip away all of that stuff and there's just you, right? This is why Addict to Athlete, some of the symbolism within even what we do with the Roman numeral 2, right?
Yeah.
Is because the Roman numeral system does not identify with 0. You can never be less than the 1. So if the Roman numeral, you've seen it before, it's the classic like I symbol, right?
Yep.
What that does is show you that with that one pillar, you are, even if you're standing alone, you are there. So whether that's you, whether that's your spirituality, whether that's your, desire to learn more about the universe, whatever it is, you're present, you're there. When you add something to that, when you add the next number in the Roman numeral system to 2, that is the foundation to build on.
Yeah.
Now you have, the I and the I. Yeah. You pull those apart, you can now build on top of that.
Balance. Yeah.
And so I think that sense of healthy connection that we can kind of find with ourselves once we find the quiet, even if it's the quiet that's been manufactured through consequence of a judge or legal system, or just a desperation kind of like request by prayer through your higher power as to show me the way, whatever that rock bottom is, that's where you can lean in and kind of lean into like, there's got to be something bigger here.
Yeah.
And I want to really kind of focus on that sense of belonging and purpose in this first step of why spirituality would help.
Oh, huge.
How could even a remote chance of finding spirituality and recovery help you find belonging?
Like I say, it's going to give you a connection to something bigger, a connection to yourself, and usually a connection to a group of like-minded people. And everybody needs connection, and everyone needs that. And that's a great way to build that foundation and start building up from, your struggles with addiction.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, purpose, right? How can spirituality help you find purpose?
Purpose, it's going to give you something. I mean, that's what higher power and I think spirituality does, is gives us that purpose of being part of something bigger, which gives us a purpose to do something better.
Yeah.
Most spirituality is about service. It's about giving and loving and doing something, that purpose.
Yeah. I do. I talk with a lot of my clients, a lot of the athletes about soul purpose. And there's a few different aspects to that. A lot of us, even in the older age, may still not quite know what our soul purpose is. Right. Yeah. And I get kind of like theological with this kind of stuff, because I love talking about this, but I won't go down that rabbit hole too deep.
Yeah.
But if you're struggling with finding out what your true purpose is, that soul purpose, start with the foundation that we all possess. All of us possess. And this is why I think spirituality and purpose are so intertwined and so connected, is because every one of us, as a foundation of our purpose, are creators. Every one of us.
Yeah.
You can't help not be a creator.
Yeah.
You can create conflict. You can create struggle, sadness, anger, depression. You can create happiness, exuberance, exhilaration, like love, compassion.
And then you can get deeper and start creating, we have builders that create buildings, artists that create art. Right here, we create a podcast. We create content about addiction recovery, right? Like there's so much, and that brings so much to somebody, that purpose to be able to find out something you can create.
Think about it. Everything, if you're driving, do this sparingly, but look around you. Even if you're driving, someone created that car, that truck. They're like, I'm freaking sick of walking. I'm going to create something that's like, get us there faster.
Seatbelt, keep us safer.
Everything around you.
Seats. Yeah. Everything.
The phone that this is being broadcast on, through the camera within it, to the computer, everything's been created. So at the foundation of this all is you are a creator. Now, what we know about spirituality and even higher powers is they are the great creators. If it's the universe that you truly believe in, guess what? That universe is a creation, and it has synchronicity and balance. All these contributions to like this mindset of creativity. This is why I love the Addict to Artist program.
Yeah.
It's about you creating something of beauty out of nothing.
Yeah. And whether that is, with paint, or that's with music, with that, it's with song, it's
with a blowtorch like Ryan, right?
Blowtorch, garbage, it doesn't matter what it is. It's what can you create with dance, with, there's so many different ways we can create. And just trying anything and going, okay, I like this, or, oh, I'm interested in doing more of this, is a great sign of where maybe your purpose is.
Absolutely. So, there's no better connection between a spiritual mindset and that understanding the principle and purpose you have of being a creator. If that's where you start, that's where you start. And you can create things with these ripple effects simply by just utilizing the emotions that you're feeling and projecting those out. Like I said, the happiness, the love, the comfort, the inclusion. Super simple to do if you can move and understand that purpose, right?
Oh, yeah.
So the second part of this, and the first one is understanding that the addiction can make you feel isolated, and it's an isolating condition.
Yeah.
Is that the second part that I've got here that we talked about yesterday was that spirituality can provide an individual with a moral compass and a foundation for their values, right? Those values can guide decision-making, behavior, goals, which can kind of lead to a more healthy lifestyle for themselves.
Yeah. There's an assignment that I often give to clients when we've had clients in treatment. And that is, what are your core, it's a core values assignment, and being able to go through and like mark, because some people just think that I don't know.
Don't have them.
I don't know what it is. What do you mean? And it's really a great assignment. It goes through questions of things, and you can kind of rate them on a 1 to 5 scale. And it helps you like kind of just pull down to what are some basic core values, because everybody has them. They're what guide us in decisions we make, activities we choose, behaviors that we engage in. And oftentimes, if we can find those values, it helps us to be able to navigate this world. Because if we follow those values and those core values, we start feeling better when we do things that match them. When we don't, we have conflict, and we have conflict within ourselves. And if you can start becoming self-aware and being able to assess, okay, what's not working here, what's not fitting, it's probably because your behavior, your actions, your words are not matching that core value.
Yeah, I like that a lot. It's that sense of that spirituality, that higher power can give you a sense of direction, right? Help you avoid temptation, kind of encourage you to pursue activities and experiences that are going to bring you more fulfillment. And that is kind of an interesting concept too, that mindset of fulfillment, because that's what we're trying to pursue when we're using it. We're trying to fulfill that void that's been created with a toxin, to forget about it, to put it off, to suppress it. And we know that doesn't work. But the flip side of that is that spirituality kind of gives you that little extra push to pursue something new, to trust yourself, like Marissa says, to find that moral compass, and to bring like more fulfillment than you've probably experienced in a long, long time.
Oh, for sure.
And fulfillment can be something different for so many people, right? There are people that find fulfillment in the running that we do.
Yeah.
There are people that find fulfillment in service that we do. To each their own, but
people, finding fulfillment in relationships and how they nurture those relationships with others. Yeah,
it becomes kind of a sense of like morality, and it establishes a very clear principle that can help you overcome addiction. Remember, you're constantly trying to fill that void. And so when we say, if you're going to practice, Addict Athletes principles of erasing and replacing, if you erase the addiction, you've got to replace it with things of greater value, more than just one topic, attribute, substance, goal, right? You've got to really lean into it with multiple channels to help to feel more fulfilled, right?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. And so, the third thing we talked about yesterday that I thought was kind of a cool thing with spirituality was, spiritual connection promotes accountability and community support by guiding those with addiction towards like-minded peers for help. First off, I think that's what Team Addict Athlete done beautifully. Yeah. I've watched and beheld some things on this team that I never thought would be possible. For instance, our athlete Brad, who started off a couple weekends ago running a 5-mile leg of our Break the Cycle run. Went home, power napped, got up and ran the Salt Lake City marathon, half marathon course, pushing our minor leaguer Emma.
Yeah.
And I was talking to him last night just briefly, and I'm like, "What was that like?" He said, "It's the hardest thing I've ever done." Because he's like, "I really wasn't prepared for it," but he's like, "I wanted to keep going. I had an obligation and a responsibility, and I didn't want to let my team down. I didn't want to let Emma down. I didn't want to let myself down."
Yeah. And for Brad, he is one that has so much integrity. If he commits to something, he's committed.
He's going to do it.
And he's going to do it. And so some of that is also that responsibility to follow through on what he said he would do, even if it is really physically and even emotionally difficult. And then also the second part, which was the hardest, was pushing Emma. He had a responsibility, not only, hey, I'll do this, but Emma loves to race. She loves to be pushed. Mm-hmm. And so that just gives you more energy to just keep going when you have that purpose behind it, like we said earlier.
Yeah. And I'm glad you said that, with the integrity, because being accountable and maintaining that practice it really is a form of spirituality. And it can kind of help you feel more understood, more cared for, I would say, and kind of be a guide through tough moments, knowing that all I have to do is act. All I have to do is move. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? And once you gain that team, and you can kind of rely on others to help you through that healing process, healing gets easier and gets better because you're not doing it alone.
Yeah.
So it's that spirituality connection that promotes accountability and community, I think, is huge. I've seen athletes give their shoes to other athletes. I've seen just amazing things happen in moments that no one thought anyone would notice. Does that make sense?
Huge. And I'm not sure exactly where you're going with all this, so maybe I'm going to jump ahead.
Go right ahead.
These are the times and why spirituality is also so connected to recovery and it helping, is because it provides that healing from past mistakes. Just even being able to have integrity, like if we discuss Brad, and being able to be somebody who follows through on what he says he's going to do, is a way that he can heal from the times when he had struggled with addiction and lied and stole and cheated and didn't follow through. And those are some ways that he heals from that, is by doing something where he does follow through. And following up with that would also be being able for individuals to practice forgiveness.
Yeah.
A lot of addiction is really tied to shame and guilt, feeling guilty for things, and then starting to think I'm a bad person, that shame piece, because of A, B, and C. And if you don't work through that, it's very difficult to overcome and get past and start healing from, the struggle of addiction if you cannot get past and feel better.
I like it. I think you're absolutely right. I also think that part of the concept of the mindset of spirituality being a helpmate to your recovery is because people that I've noticed use this as a foundation. It's turned that spiritual mindset into an avenue that they can manage their recovery because they can then connect with that higher power. You know what I'm saying? Like spirituality has to come first before you kind of adopt the higher power mindset, because it's you being willing to be open to having something greater than yourself. And I think that's a very strong principle. It provides that moral compass, the accountability that we all need. And spiritual growth can be an effective way to, I think, promote healthy lifestyles, because it takes the, I guess, decision-making process to that next level. It's like, I just know what I'm doing. Your recovery goals, your community, everything's going to be so much nicer, so much easier. And there's a possibility that you could get dinged for it too, because when you make those kind of changes, people look at you as being weird. It's like, wow, look at you, Mr. Holier Than Thou.
And all that is they're just, we talk about the crabs pulling somebody down. That is just the crabs trying to pull you down. When they don't feel good about themselves, they want you to do the same.
Well, and this is what happened with me. I mean, I was very much not a spiritual person that I could think of. I did my best to do no harm. But when you're struggling with addiction, it almost comes with the territory to a certain degree. So the mindset and concept of what this looks like in my own life was kind of an interesting thing, because when I found spirituality was simply just to shut up and listen. And quiet everything. I remember just probably a month or two before I met you, I was mountain biking in southern Utah, and all by myself, just way out in the middle of nowhere. I took my headphones off because I had one of those awesome Walkman, because it was like circa 1999, right? 98. Yeah. There wasn't no such thing as MP3 players yet. And I remember just taking those headphones off and just stopping and looking around, and I could hear the silence. It was so quiet that it was deafening. Does that make sense? It was like this weird ringing with no ringing. It was the strangest thing. I thought, I've never really heard silence before.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, it was kind of this, I'd already kind of made my switch from addiction. I'd been doing quite well. I was, investing myself in work and in mountain biking. But that moment was interesting, because I think that's the first time I opened myself up to something of like, even when there's nothing here, it's loud. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I thought that's really interesting. It's the concept of, there are no ordinary moments, because as I really started to tune in, I could hear my own heartbeat. I could hear like the subtlest kind of wind and all kinds of stuff. It was the craziest experience. And it opened myself up to be like, there's something bigger out there. As things transpired, I started figuring out that I'm stronger than I thought I was. And when I met you and we had our interesting little courtship, I learned that I could do really hard things. Those hard things came when you introduced me to the church, and the church saved my life. I went from the concept of spirituality to higher power to religion. Yeah. And it helped me immensely. And so, it's one of those things where when people do try to discredit your spirituality or spiritual beliefs, there's a reason why. And I found that it's because a lot of times spirituality becomes so personal and so profound for the human experience that it can be a motivation for other people to use it against you because you hold it so precious.
Yeah. I have a question though, kind of a side route to this. I've always had religion, spirituality in my life since I was young. My parents taught it to me. It was always there. But I think sometimes if you're looking at it from like maybe your perspective of an outsider to that, wouldn't sometimes looking at something bigger than you, something that big, make you look or feel even more small in the grand scheme of things? Is that kind of a scary thing if that's something you've never known?
No, because the funny thing about that, I mean, I can see that path for sure.
Yeah.
But for me, I was pretending to be really big when I wasn't. Does that make sense? I was pretending that I was something that I wasn't. And when I got humbled about being out there in the middle of nowhere and like, the concept of like, even in pure silence, there's deafening noise. It was kind of like, how small are we really? But yet I feel this immense connection with with this environment that I'm in, using my own power to get out here. It's like, so I can see that happening, but I think it would do us well to like remember, really, it might sound mean, but how small we really are. Like, if you think about it, I've heard this on social media before, like we're on a rock in the middle of nowhere floating around in space. That just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense.
When you look at that, it makes you feel so small. When
we were flying home from DC and I'm looking out the window at these cities and you can see the whole city because it's all illuminated up by the lighting. And, I'm like looking down there thinking how big I am. I can put my whole thumb over the whole city, of Missoula as we're flying over.
Yeah.
It's all about perspective. There was a guy I was listening to years ago that was, teaching some interesting spirituality principles. And he talked about a situation where he was called to a certain position. And one of the other leadership kind of pulled him aside and said, "That feels pretty good, huh? Everybody like, smiling at you, shaking your hands." He's like, "But remember, you're a nobody." Mm-hmm. And the guy's like, "What? What do you mean? Like, what? Ouch." And he's like, "We've all got to remember that we're all here doing this together. And that when any of us try to rise up and be bigger, badder, faster, stronger, your higher power will find a way to slow you down."
Humility is a good
and it is
balance on that.
It totally is. And so it's always resonated with me. But no, I think my head was too big that I thought like I was untouchable to the point of like, I don't want to let anybody in, but when I realized how small, like, all this really is, kind of a cool concept. But, I can see people feeling that way for sure, but just because we're small doesn't mean we're insignificant.
Yeah.
I mean, that time out there put me on a whole different trajectory. And the only reason we're sitting behind these mics is because, I had an epiphany and a spiritual experience of like, maybe I've got to like be a little bit more humble and a little bit more quiet. Me, I don't like quiet.
Yeah.
I don't do quiet well. Have you noticed?
At times.
Yeah.
You do like your quiet times, but not always.
But yeah. And so I like what you're saying, but really it's so universally personal too, that like, what works for you. I think in order to find it though, you've got to get quiet. So, there's a few things that we wanted to talk about, just to kind of give you a premise of like how it can work. This is one avenue and angle amongst many you can take, in your recovery. And I think this is one of the funny things is why it's so hard for some people to,
a lot of it's just try it out. That's part of life. That's part of recovery is being willing to try and don't give up or think that if it, doesn't work, that you're a bad person or a failure. Everything is about practicing. And that's the only way we get better at it.
Yeah. Well, I remember one time talking to a kid about higher powers and whatnot. And it was funny because he's like, "Well, my higher power is a doorknob." And I'm like, "Do you really believe that?" And he's like, "Yes." I'm like, "Then explain it." And he couldn't, right?
Yeah.
Because he's heard that, right? That, my spirituality is the doorknob into a meeting. Okay, that's really not it. If you think about it, what power is it that you're using to physically wrap your hands around that doorknob to turn it?
Something internal.
The exhilaration inside of you saying, whatever's on the other side of this door, it could potentially help me. So I'm going. I'm not waiting. I'm going. That movement. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So don't just call it the doorknob. Get into it. If you're gonna try and proclaim that, back it up. Another kid raised his hand and said, "Mine's the universe." I'm like, "Explain it."
Mm-hmm.
And he couldn't. And I'm like, get into it. Get into it for a minute. I'm like, look, do you realize what would happen if the moon decided it wanted to be like, 90 to 100 miles closer to us than it is right now? Or if it decided to spin off into the sun?
Yeah.
What would happen to us? Like, what would happen if all of a sudden our poles shifted and what was north was south and what was south was north? I'm like, we'd be screwed. Yeah. This universe is so delicately, perfectly balanced right now that what power comes from that? And he's like, I'm like, there's precision, there's time, there's motion. And I said, you can use anything so long as you get into it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I love talking about that kind of stuff.
Assessing it and being able to have some awareness about it and where it comes from and why. Yeah, very important.
Yeah. My spirituality coming from God is that personal relationship that I have, that I know that no matter what I've been through, He knows, and so I get behind it. and the avenue I choose to serve is through the religion. And so it's such a cool thing. I would never knock someone's religion or someone's higher power, but I'd love to get to know it more. Tell me more about it. Like, what was it like for you, right?
Yeah.
That whole concept. And so really, listeners, whatever works for you, get behind it, lead it, teach it, fill it. Don't use it as a catalyst to try and knock someone else's down, but use it to build your building taller without knocking anyone else's down.
So important.
One of those Gary V quotes I love so much.
Yeah.
But listeners, there you have it. That's kind of where we're at. Any final thoughts?
No, I mean, go out, do some connection, be quiet, see what comes to you, and start expanding on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd love to get the dialogue a little bit more. Like if you watch this later on, please tell us what your higher power is. Tell us what spirituality is. Tell us, maybe share a picture that you've taken that really kind of embraces that. There's so many photos I took over this trip that just encapsulated like spirituality, just kind of like the beauty, the majesty, the greatness of this experience we get to have that couldn't have been done in addiction. Does that make sense? But yeah, and if you're listening to this on the podcast, shoot, send us a message. I'd love to hear from you. You can find all of that resource on addicttoathlete.org. Our website it has all the content of our information on emails and phone numbers, all that kind of stuff. So keep checking it out. Thank you so much for tuning in. We got a lot of good headliners coming up this week for the Mainstream podcast. And give us a review, whatever platform you're listening to. We'd love to hear from you. And athletes, until next time, continue to do your best by turning your mess into your message. I'll go push pause.
Okay.
Anytime now.